is
Mm-hmm.
that everything has to have an exchange of value.
Mm-hmm.
Money is just an exchange of value. That's all it is. It's an exchange of energy.
Of the
Mm-hmm.
revenue that you make, right? And much like in a startup.
Yes, man, and let's get some of our old soldiers back out.
Musicians to be professional. They know how to talk.
To help them wake up happy. It's
I
not
love
about a
that.
rectangle and a price.
All right, y'all. We tuned in for another episode of Bank That Radio Show. I'm your host, Andreas, and I have Amber Fuhriman, who is on Zoom with us. And, one, I got to give a shout out to Podmatch because I've been finding a whole lot of great, fantastic people with diverse backgrounds. But let me tell you a little bit about Amber. She is an attorney, an author, speaker, success architect, and podcaster. She is the owner and attorney at Fuhriman Law in Las Vegas, Nevada, where she practices criminal defense and immigration law. I think that's an interesting combination to be able to practice criminal defense and immigration law. But I can see where, it goes hand in hand. So Amber, just a little bit about yourself. And I know you have this, illustrious uh, about Amber on your profile and stuff, but I really want people to be able to get to understand. Oh, an author as well. I'm sitting there looking at break your bullshit box. Okay. I definitely want to talk about that too.
Sounds good. I'm always down for it. I will pre-frame all of this by saying that sometimes my dog decides she wants to be a part of this episode. So if you hear
Uh-huh.
her crunching in the background, my
Uh,
apologies, and just know
oh,
that
that's
she
fine.
sends her
Hey,
love.
hey, that is I'll tell you a funny story real quick. That's it is what it is. So on my podcasting journey, I've actually had my kids in my podcast when they were little as infants because of course, I didn't have a babysitter and things of that nature. So, I still have to make things work. And I had artists lined up. It was interesting to have one of my daughters when she was like about 9, 10 months, whatever, just sitting there with two interviews, just sitting there on my arm, just looking at the person like, oh, okay, what is he doing? And then I also had the same daughter with a group of rappers. And, I don't know if they felt awkward or whatever, but I was just asking them about their careers and stuff like that while she's just sitting there on my arm. She didn't make any noise. She's just sitting there looking at folks
Yeah,
or whatever, like, ah. So I get it. I think life should allow for experiences like that
it's
regardless
so
of
true.
work and all that things of that nature because it's hard to separate the two and I don't really think it's fair to try to separate the 2.
No, it's really not. When I first started my show, I used to crate her up when I would do an episode and I would make, because
Mm-hmm.
she's always so quiet in her crate.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to realize like people actually create social media accounts for their dogs. And one day I didn't
Mm-hmm.
crate her and she jumped up in the episode and the interviewer was like, let's forget you for a minute. Let's talk about your dog. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like people want the human. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's one of the biggest mistakes that so many different people make is they try to make it so perfect when
Mm-hmm.
what they actually attract to, relate to, and connect to is the human and messy part of
Mm-hmm.
what you're editing out through,
Mm-hmm.
your Instagram perfect life.
Yeah, I've had those conversations all the time. And I think that's actually how I've been able to build my audience through authenticity and people knowing that, I'm gonna edit the interview as far as like I'll put the graphics up. I'll
Yeah.
put like a little border around, what I'm saying, the interview box. And, I'll throw in commercials, as see fit or who pays for space and ad space and all that stuff. But the rest of the stuff I'm like pretty much stays in.
Yep.
Because that is life. Life is this one big old complex thing that we live. And at the end of the day, we have to be happy with it. So,
Yeah. That's actually the advice that I give to my coaching clients when they say, I don't like myself on video. And my answer
hmm
is live stream it. And they're
hmm
like, I just told you that I didn't like myself on video, and now you want me to not be able to edit it. And I said, all the
hmm
stress is gone.
hmm
All the stress of thinking that you can take something back is gone and it's
hmm
out into the world.
hmm
So allow yourself to get better in a place where the opportunity to edit it and change it and perfect it isn't there.
exactly. Exactly. So what got you into, law and, wanting to go down that path? Because that's everybody can't do that.
It's interesting. And I think one of the craziest things about human behavior is
Mm-hmm.
that our answers to things change depending on the stage of life that we're in. So I think it's
Mm,
interesting to think back to the way that I would have answered this question 3, 4, 5 years ago and the way I
mm-hmm.
answer it now. The short answer, and I talk about this in my book, is that I was running from my trauma and I thought that law
Mm,
school and success would fix it.
mm-hmm.
My dad passed away when I was 18, and one of the
Oh,
last conversations I had with him was about how he thought I'd make a good attorney. So when I
mm-hmm.
was running my life into the ground and drinking my success away and
Mm-hmm.
grieving in the only way that I knew how as the oldest child and the first person that had dreams of going to college,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that that life of bar hopping and failing out of college and not holding myself accountable to where I knew I could be
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the life I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered the conversation with my dad that I'd make a good attorney. And I was like, well, nothing else is cutting it. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
the 6-figure income and a law degree
Mm-hmm.
will make everything stop hurting. And for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's waiting for the cliffhanger, it didn't. So eventually you got to deal with the shit.
I love it. I love it. Do your clients like your approach?
I mean, they pay me, so I would assume so.
I love it. They baby.
I my
You
coaching
seem
clients are my
very
legal.
relatable.
What's that?
You seem very relatable.
Thank you. I get told all the time that I don't appear as what people expect from an attorney, and I tell them that's the
Uh-huh.
best compliment I've ever gotten. So,
Exactly.
my legal clients, it's really interesting because I have this both in my legal business and also in my approach
Mm-hmm.
to coaching. I just don't buy into the bullshit excuses. As a criminal
Mm-hmm.
defense attorney, I can't tell you how many times I heard I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 41 and I've never been in the wrong place at the wrong time that resulted in a felony. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that that doesn't exist, but there are
Mm-hmm.
choices that get made up to that wrong place at the wrong time moment that we get to
Mm-hmm.
learn from and take responsibility for.
Mm-hmm.
That same thing happens in the coaching industry, right? It's not my fault that this happened to me. Like, I have no control over this. Like, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Keep thinking that, and
Mm-hmm.
let's see where your results end up.
Mm-hmm.
So, on both sides of the spectrum, it's just this real heart to heart conversation. That may have
Mm-hmm.
been true.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're in this situation. What are we going to do to get you out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And I laugh and jokingly say that I'm surprised that people pay me because um, I'm not always gentle. I'm always
Mm-hmm.
kind,
Mm-hmm.
and I always come from a place of possibility and love and support. That
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the gentle pat you on the back approach is what
Mm-hmm.
actually got you into your problems, not what's going to get you out of them.
Exactly. So you practicing law, is that within your own practice or you are an employee of another practice?
Oh God, no. I opened my practice in 2017 and I am certifiably unemployable.
That that sounds like you've had bad experiences with other ones. You're like, oh God, no. Like
It's
I brought up a
interesting.
trigger point.
I'm actually winding down my law practice, and each time I
Okay.
tell myself I'm going to close it, I end up
Hmm.
taking more cases.
Oh
But
wow.
I no longer have this big staff. I don't
Hmm.
have attorneys that work for me. And
Hmm.
it's really interesting because I was afraid for a
Hmm.
long time to close my practice because I was making so much money in it, but I was
Hmm.
so miserable. I
Hmm.
wanted to be working with people in coaching. I wanted to be speaking. I wanted to be traveling. I wanted to be
Hmm.
podcasting more.
Hmm.
And then I had to go to court. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
a horrible inconvenience for me.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
um,
I go get all this
so
money and go to court, and I can be out here talking to people and inspiring
right,
them, and
exactly.
I
So
love it.
I made the decision to close my law practice. And then
Uh-huh.
as the moment that I said I'm going to close my practice, all of a sudden that weight of feeling like I had to be in it was gone.
Hmm.
My staff found different jobs, and then I was
Hmm.
still getting these referrals because I've been doing it
Hmm.
for 12 years.
Hmm.
And it then became a question of, can I take this case and
Hmm.
not sacrifice what I'm
Hmm.
building over here and the freedom that I
Hmm.
want over here?
Hmm.
And if the answer to that is yes,
Hmm.
then can we come to an agreement on payment terms? If
Hmm.
the answer to it is no, then I don't care how much money you're willing to pay me. I will
Hmm.
send that referral to someone else because
Hmm.
I'm at a point in my life and business right now where my ability
Mm-hmm.
to maintain the
Mm-hmm.
life that I want to have is more important than the ability to maintain the status.
I've been doing this for the last, yes, about 7 years now, and I love it. It gives you this sense of freedom that you get to move around, and I bet people see it too, right? You get to walk around happy, and people are not happy. They're not happy for you. They're mad because they're not happy, and they can see your happiness.
Yeah, and I think that everybody can relate to this. I'm going to use the legal industry, however, insert whatever industry you're in, because I promise you, you've had this conversation. When
Mm-hmm.
I went to and finally opened up to the attorneys that are in my community and told them that I was walking away from the full-time practice of law, every single one of them congratulated me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like with this almost jealous congratulations, like I wish
Mm-hmm.
that I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody outside of the industry looked at me like I had three heads. Like, why would you ever walk away from this? And I
Exactly.
think it's so interesting how we look at somebody else's life and think because you have the law degree, because you have
Mm-hmm.
the title after your name,
Mm-hmm.
because you have the respect that they believe comes with the profession, how could
Mm-hmm.
you ever choose to give that up? Well, I also have the panic attacks and the anxiety and the emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not always worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually where my journey started, was that I started having panic attacks when I was at the pinnacle of my legal career.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize how or understand how I
Mm-hmm.
could be so professionally successful and
Mm-hmm.
so mentally unstable at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, because
Mm-hmm.
professional success was supposed to fix the
Mm-hmm.
trauma and the emotional stuff.
No, I think it just adds to it because you get that pressure of
Yeah.
delivering and all that stuff, and people want results out of like nothing. And I'm like, you want them to pull nothing out of thin air, and I'm like, regardless of how much money they throw at it, and I'm like, money isn't the key to fixing everything. So yeah, I definitely get that. So, at what point did you start your podcast then?
I started my podcast in 2019. I
Mm-hmm.
was recovering from learning why I
Mm-hmm.
was still having panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And the best way that I can describe it
Mm-hmm.
is like we've all had that week that like maybe we hosted people at our house for Thanksgiving, or we
Mm-hmm.
had a party at our house and we have more trash than normal and the trash guy hasn't come yet, and we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to put as much as we can in our trash can, but
Mm-hmm.
the lid keeps popping up and we're like, how much more shit can I put in this trash
Mm-hmm.
can before the lid like just blows? That's
Mm-hmm.
what my trauma box was like
Mm-hmm.
the success was supposed to be the trash guy that was going to come take away
Mm-hmm.
everything I didn't want to deal with. And I
Yeah.
just kept shoving this
Mm-hmm.
box full of all of the things that I was ready for someone else to take away.
Yeah.
And eventually it exploded and it overflowed. So as I dealt with those things and realized that I was going to have to do the inner trauma work in order to start to move forward,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I wanted to share that experience. Attorneys, doctors, so many people, but high achieving professions postgraduate, there's this expectation that you're just supposed to be okay, and that
Mm-hmm.
talking about mental health isn't okay to do.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to go to an attorney and hear them talk about their panic and anxiety. They want to go to an
Mm-hmm.
attorney and hear them talk about how big of a rock they are, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
be a bulldog for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I started opening up about this, I was really afraid that it was going to ruin my legal career. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, what I found was that attorneys were coming out of the woodwork saying, well, I suffer from panic too, and I have anxiety too, and I have
Mm-hmm.
depression. And I'm like, why are we all suffering in silence? So the
Mm-hmm.
podcast became a way for me to start to help people realize that they're not alone, no matter
Mm-hmm.
where they're at in their journey, that
Mm-hmm.
there's somebody else in the world that can relate to what they're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
so that they could actually start to get the connection that is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the kryptonite
Mm-hmm.
to their internal self feelings.
So as you're putting that out, and I believe you said you were doing like 2 episodes a week, and then you slowed down to one. Excuse me. As you're going through this content and building this audience, does the goal then shift from, because I'm sure you got a lot of good responses and stuff, and you built like a core fan base that then it started expanding. So then where do you go with the podcast then? Because you've met the need, you've put out the information, people know that there's a community, but then how do you like build upon that?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting is what we find so often is that we talk about and we share what we need to hear the most so often. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I started my podcast, it was called More Than Corporate, and it was talking about how we're so much more than our professions. And so often we lose ourselves in our professions,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to remember the human being that we are that got us to that place.
Mm-hmm.
That makes complete sense because I was going through this identity crisis of feeling like all of my self-worth and all of my value came from the legal industry,
Mm-hmm.
and that I didn't know who I was as a person. As I healed, that message became faded for me, and I was no longer aligned with talking about it
Mm-hmm.
as the name of the podcast. So when the book came out of Break Your Bullshit Box, we
Mm-hmm.
rebranded to that, and much of the content from More Than Corporate is still relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, though, we talk less from the identity aspect and more from the possibility aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the identity aspect being the whole point of the show,
Mm-hmm.
the identity aspect is one of four different approaches that we take to the show.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, and this is where Break Your Bullshit Box came from. I believe that we constantly live this life cycle,
Mm-hmm.
that we start by challenging our identity. Something happens that makes us question who we are and what our purpose is. And
Mm-hmm.
then immediately after that happens, our bullshit excuses start to kick in. Whenever
Mm-hmm.
we start to see the possibilities, you hear that voice in your head that tells you why you are not the right person, or nobody's going to
Mm-hmm.
listen to you, or you can't
Mm-hmm.
do it, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So once we deal with those excuses, then we need a plan. So we start to design our life. And
Mm-hmm.
as soon as we start to design our life, we have to have the courage to go out and execute that plan. Well,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as we execute it, then there's something else that happens that challenges our identity. And then we have more excuses, and then we need a plan, and then we need courage. So I
Mm-hmm.
just believe there's this four-part cycle that we continuously live as human beings.
Mm. I definitely I can see that. So you released the book back in August.
I
Did you
did.
have any expectations for the book at all, or?
No, I was happy to have written it. We're re-releasing it within the next couple of, I would say month. It'll probably be out within the next month,
Mm-hmm.
doing some just short formatting changes because
Mm-hmm.
I rushed the release of the project. And this is where being true to what's important to you is so valuable, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't regret it at all.
Mm-hmm.
August 23rd of 2001 is the day my dad died. And
Mm-hmm.
so much of who I am today is
Mm-hmm.
because of what he taught me when he was alive and what I learned about myself after he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I wanted this book to release on that
Mm-hmm.
date.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't get it released, it wasn't going to come out till next year. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like now was the time to release it. So we published it on that date.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just making some small formatting and proofreading changes to it and going to re-release it. So for me, the expectation was following through on something that I had been saying that I wanted to do for the last 4 years and hadn't
Mm-hmm.
executed on.
Mm-hmm.
I did make number one new release bestseller when it
Mm.
was released. And so that was
Yeah.
unexpected and great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But for me, it was more of a personal achievement of saying this is
Mm-hmm.
something I've wanted to do for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say an unexpected result from it, and this is, I think, important for anybody that's sitting on that ledge of doing anything, whether it's speaking or whether it's releasing a book or starting a
Mm-hmm.
business, is nothing about me changed from the day before I released the book and the day after I released the book. I was the
Mm-hmm.
same person.
Mm-hmm.
However, I felt like I had this thing to offer the world. I felt like I had this credibility and this reason that people would approach me. So that
Mm-hmm.
voice in my head that had always been, why would anybody listen to you? What do you have to offer? Well, now it was this book. And it was
Mm-hmm.
really interesting to me how quickly that shifted and how much I didn't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had become really good at listening to that voice, telling it to shut up and moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that speaking engagement is the thing that shifts us from saying we're not a public speaker to being a public speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Just opening the business is that thing that shifts us from saying I'm not a business owner to I am a business owner. I
Mm-hmm.
went from somebody who had been wanting to publish a book to a published author overnight, and it immediately changed the way that I felt about my value to the world.
Yeah, I definitely get that. So then, you talk about entrepreneurship and being a business owner. Like, at what point did you consider yourself a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Oh God, I don't know if I still do. I mean, I opened my business in 2017 and I knew
Hmm.
nothing about opening a business.
Hmm.
I joke, but it's based in real life that
Hmm.
like I had always worked in offices with those magic cupboards where supplies just fill themselves up. So the first
Hmm.
time that I had to go mail a letter, I was like, where's the envelopes and the stamps and the pens and how do I
Hmm.
stamp this and how much does it cost to mail a letter and all the
Hmm.
things that I had never had to do because people did it for me in my
Hmm.
professional life. And so when I get asked often, what do you wish that you would have known when you opened your business? And I think that that's such a dangerous question
Hmm.
because if I had known everything I needed to know to open my business, I would have just made different mistakes.
Hmm.
Right? Like we never know everything. So the
Hmm.
mistakes that I made, the things that I learned through trial and error, those were the things that I needed to learn. There's no such thing as a seamless business opening. If
No,
you're
there isn't.
starting from like this level of experience, what you open in your next business is always going to be different than what you opened before. Opening
Hmm.
my coaching business came with its own challenges that I never
Hmm.
experienced opening my law firm.
Hmm.
So for me, what I wish I would have known when I opened my business is that nobody knows what the hell they're doing.
Hmm.
Like when you look at somebody and you think they have it all together, they don't. They're just really, really good at being okay not knowing what they're doing and
Hmm.
being willing to figure it out.
Yeah. Hey, I say that all the time because I've had multiple businesses that I've opened. And the first business didn't do what I wanted it to do as far as goals and stuff, but it was a great learning curve for me. And then of course tax write-offs and all that stuff, whatever helped too, because I was working at the time. But everything has gotten easier as far as the opening and launching of the business where you know what direction you want to go into. But like you said, they're their own problems. Like I have a marketing business and I help small businesses market. Now, that in itself is one complicated problem because small businesses
Don't know
owners,
what they offer?
yeah, or they don't see the value in paying a third party to market because they think they can just do
Mhm.
it themselves. But I'm like, you're good at your business, you're not good at marketing. That's,
Ain't that the
that's,
truth?
hey,
And
see?
yeah, like there was a really good podcast for anybody who's football fans with the Kelsey brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a series called No Dumb Questions, which
Mm-hmm.
is I love so much. And especially with Travis Kelsey being in a relationship with Taylor Swift, now they're getting all the Swifties that are asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're calling in and they're asking questions like, what is a down? And Travis is trying to answer this. And he's like, a down is a down. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the value of having an outside marketer, right? Is like we get into our business so much and we know it so well that the
Mm-hmm.
things that people don't understand about our business, we have a hard time explaining to them.
Mm-hmm.
And when we bring in a third party marketer that doesn't live in our business world, they can say, like, you're making a jump from point A to point Z, and I need you to
Mm-hmm.
fill in the rest of the alphabet because nobody understands what the hell you're talking about.
And that's how I try to, you know what? I'm gonna start using that analogy. That's what I've been trying to say it to them that way. Because like I picked up fingerprinting and background clients, and I didn't know all the other different stuff you could do with the fingerprinting business, like fingerprint cards and what they're used for, and the ATF wanting them, and going across state lines and all that stuff. So I think it's very interesting all the information that I'm learning, but it's like, it's her stuff and she knows it. But I was like, we have to be able to break this down and educate the potential consumer so they can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I love it.
And
Um,
more than that,
mhm,
being willing, like the other thing that I'm in love with right now when it comes to marketing, and I
mhm,
don't live in the marketing world, so I want to
mhm,
make that clear, but I love studying businesses.
mhm,
And I am fascinated with what's going on with the Stanley Cups right now and
mhm,
watching them just fly off the shelf. Not hockey Stanley Cups, but drinking
mhm,
Stanley Cups, right?
mhm,
And I was watching an interview with somebody about the chief marketing officer for Stanley. And people don't realize a lot of times that Stanley, the cute pink cup with the handle, is the same company that released those ugly ass green thermal things that we all used when we were, kids,
mhm,
or your parents took to their job site when you were a kid.
mhm,
And there came a point where they were so tied to that identity, and their chief marketing officer had to say, like, you have all of these single moms or stay-at-home moms or,
mhm.
you know, these young adults that want to buy your cups and they want them with handles and pastel colors. Like, give them what they want. So
Exactly.
often as business owners, we get tied to what we think our business is.
Mhm,
And I think what I've learned over the last, 9 years or 8 years of owning a business is that my business drastically is never what I think it's going to be.
mhm,
What I think I'm going to be delivering to a client is very rarely what they think they need. And
mhm,
my job as a service provider is to cause those two things to meet,
mhm,
where what I know they need is what they end up getting. But I don't try to convince them you need this over here.
mhm,
I give them what it is they want, and then
mhm,
we walk them into the
mhm.
middle. And that is really hard to do without an outside perspective of your business.
Yes, I love that. Um, so getting into coaching and public speaking, right? How were you able to learn to land your first client, and then how were you able to land your first public, your speaking engagement?
So the public speaking, I'm going to start there. I have a love-hate relationship with the public speaking industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's rough.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most frustrating things for me is this like pay to play world.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
it And I think what it comes down to is just making sure, like, have I paid to be on stages? Absolutely, I have. Have I
Mm-hmm.
been paid to be on stages? Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
There's this like moment where you've got to pay your dues.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pay to play things can be helpful in that way. I think when it comes to deciding whether or not I'm willing to pay to speak at an event, my internal process is this an event that I would go to if I wasn't speaking?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, what's the value that I'm going to get if
Mm-hmm.
I pay to be on this stage? Or is it the
Mm-hmm.
connections?
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose of that? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're somebody who wants to be a speaker
Mm-hmm.
and you decide to do a pay to play, my
Mm-hmm.
biggest advice to you, the most valuable I've ever gotten from a pay to play, is an event that will actually do a speaker reel for you in
Mm-hmm.
exchange for your investment to come on as a speaker. And
Yeah.
so that way you leave with assets that you can
Mm-hmm.
start marketing yourself, because that
Mm-hmm.
speaker reel is invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say is, and this was something else I didn't realize about the industry, because I'm somebody who values transparency and authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a chicken and the egg situation. So you need the experience to get the speaking engagement. You need the
Mm-hmm.
speaking engagement in order to get the stuff
Mm-hmm.
to show you have the experience. And so it might be that you need to call up your friends and you need to ask them to sit in an audience and you need to go stand on a stage and you need to practice your speech with them and have somebody video it and make a speaker reel for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, does it feel like you're cheating? It can, but hate the game, not the player, right?
Yeah.
That's what you got to do to have the results. So, it was a lot of showing up in places, being willing. The podcast helped create your
Mm-hmm.
own stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
If people won't put you on their stage, create your own. So the
Mm-hmm.
podcast gave me a platform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's the advice for speaking. My first coaching client, I again, there's this area where people think they need a certain amount of experience in
Mm-hmm.
order to be able to charge people for something.
Yeah.
And this is one of my biggest pet peeves, because however old you are, that's how many years of experience you have at being you.
Mm-hmm.
And people are paying you to be you in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship with them. So
Mm-hmm.
if, I have a client, for example, who's a massage therapist, and she wanted
Mm-hmm.
to start a stretching class, a stretching program.
Mm-hmm.
And she said to me, Amber, I just don't have any experience stretching. And I said, how long have you been a massage therapist?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, 10 years. And I said, and you've never stretched anybody in 10 years? And she's like, no, I stretch them every day. And I said, so you have 10 years of experience. Well, I've
Mm-hmm.
never done it in this way. Before we started recording, we were talking about the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about how the content didn't change, but the wrapping paper did.
Yep.
So as you create this new product or service,
Mm-hmm.
your experiences aren't necessarily changing. The wrapping paper of
Mm-hmm.
what you're offering is changing, and that doesn't take away your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So owning what it is you bring to the table
Mm-hmm.
is so incredibly important when you're trying to get your first client in a new business.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is to get rid of the fake it till you make it attitude. To me, that is the most dangerous statement that exists in our
Mm-hmm.
world today.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants you to fake it till you make it, because whether you believe in energetic work or not, there
Mm-hmm.
is scientific proof to show that you actually enter a room up to a full second before your body enters a room, that you have this energetic force field around you. Have you
Mm-hmm.
ever been in a situation where somebody walks into the room and everybody's attention immediately goes to that
Mm-hmm.
person because the energy changed?
Mm-hmm.
Or that cousin that always complains about everything about their life comes home
Mm-hmm.
for family dinner, and
Mm-hmm.
the entire energetic
Mm-hmm.
frequency of
It was
the
like, oh,
room
here's
goes
this
down?
person. Mm-hmm.
So what happens when we say fake it to them till you make it is we already feel unaligned
Mm-hmm.
with what it is we're doing, and we already feel like we're being inauthentic. And
Mm-hmm.
now we want somebody to give us money in
Mm-hmm.
exchange for being inauthentic.
Mm-hmm.
Being willing to be true and honest about what you know and what you think you can do for somebody, while
Mm-hmm.
also acknowledging that you still have more to learn and you always will, is
Mm-hmm.
the only way that you're going to be able to get the experience that you need. So
Mm-hmm.
you can do barters. I've done barters in the past. My rule when I coach my clients on opening new businesses is
Mm-hmm.
that everything has to have an exchange of value.
Mm-hmm.
Money is just an exchange of value. That's all it is. It's an exchange of energy. So if you don't feel
That
comfortable just yet
mm-hmm.
exchanging for that green money, the fun coupons,
Mm-hmm.
then exchange for something else that has a similar value.
Mm-hmm.
How much would you charge for your service, and what can somebody else put together in a package
Mm-hmm.
that you can barter with that is of similar value?
Yeah.
If that makes you feel better, that's a client. Use that as a testimonial and then grow your business from there. But
Mm-hmm.
stop doing shit for free.
Yeah. What you just said, the money is exchange of energy. My last interview I just did, what's today? Today's Thursday. When I do it? It was either Monday or Tuesday or last week, said that same exact thing. And I love that, I've been running into all the interviewees that I've been interviewing, y'all all have the same thread of how you're looking at yourself and your businesses and stuff, and y'all align together with myself. And I believe that, that's like, I believe in energy and spirituality and things of that nature. And I feel like, what I'm saying, my new alignment is with a lot of y'all. And that's why I'm getting the interviews that I'm getting. That's why I'm having the fun that I'm having with the interviews. And, it's not even feeling like podcasting. Well, first of all, tell people this is fun. I just get paid to have fun.
Right? That's how I
And I
feel about
love
my
it.
trainings. My mom's like, when do you work? And I say, well, first of all, I work whenever I'm not working, because I'm an
Uh-huh.
entrepreneur. So I'm
Uh-huh.
always at work unless I'm not at work.
Yeah.
But second of all, and this is what caused me to start to make the shift from being an attorney, is I can stand in front of a training class and do a full 8-day training and be
Mm-hmm.
completely energized the whole time. And then
Mm-hmm.
I can go to a court appearance and feel like I need a nap after 2 hours, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not energetically aligned with
Mm-hmm.
what I'm doing in a
Exactly.
courtroom. I
Exactly.
know really brilliant attorneys that can do a 2-week jury trial, and they are bouncing off the walls constantly. That's good. They should stay in that environment. That is
Mm-hmm.
not for me.
Exactly. I love that you
Jury
found
trials
yourself.
drain me.
And yeah, I love that you found your new purpose in life.
Right? So, I mean, the reason I say that and my advice for people is like if you feel like you are energetically dragging yourself through your life,
Hmm.
figure out what the purpose is of you feeling like it needs to be hard. Like
Hmm.
where are you not aligned with what you're doing? Because at the
Hmm.
moment you align, it's like
Hmm.
all of the speed limits on your success just
Hmm.
completely disappear.
Yeah. So let's go back to your podcast. What's the format of your podcast? Do you have like interview style podcast? Is it just you or
I'm glad that you clarified that because often my podcast doesn't have a format. It turns out being very conversational.
okay?
And sometimes it goes off the rails, but we
Mm-hmm.
do interviews. I'm going to start doing solo episodes again. I had fallen off of them for a while, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting feedback from people that they miss them. So
Mm-hmm.
we do a interview format that goes between 30 minutes and 2 hours. I've
Mm-hmm.
had people that I've had to break down into multiple episodes because the
Mm-hmm.
conversation just flows and you don't want to cut it off.
Exactly.
Um, and then my solo episodes are normally 10 to 15 minutes that I'll release
Mm-hmm.
in between
So
the interviews.
what has podcasting taught you?
Oh man, that as an attorney, I thought I knew how to communicate and I didn't. Um, it's
I love
like
it. I love how you're honest.
I mean, there's no other way to be, right? It made me a better attorney. All of this communication training made me a better attorney because I could walk into a courtroom and
Mm-hmm.
appear differently. At the same time, my experiences in a courtroom made me a better interviewer
Mm-hmm.
because I had always been trained as an attorney that if you lose your case and you have to appeal, the people who are deciding whether you win or not aren't listening to the audio, they're reading a transcript. So
Mm-hmm.
when they read that transcript, you better make damn sure that when you did the trial, you
Mm-hmm.
explained the scenario good enough for them to read it and understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So interviewing taught me, or podcasting taught me, number one, that human connection is so incredibly important, and we have
Mm-hmm.
lost so much of it
Oh
in
yes.
the
Oh my
current industry
goodness.
we're in right now.
I just think the
Um,
world has in
yeah,
general.
100%. Secondly, that as the host, I don't need to be the expert. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
love when I have people that I can flow with.
Mm-hmm.
And my interviews are much better when I show up to the interview curious instead of
Mm-hmm.
believing that I need to have the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Being curious, I think it was my word of the year for 2021 was curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think approaching that, I mean, when I start my trainings, my first level of training that I tell people is that the four
Mm-hmm.
most dangerous words in the English language are I already know that,
Mm-hmm.
because we shut down and we miss
Mm-hmm.
information that we didn't actually know because we think we know how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I go into an episode, even if it's with a coach that does very similar things that I do, I
Mm-hmm.
approach it as if I know nothing,
Mm-hmm.
being curious about how they approach things. Because you made a comment a few minutes ago about your last few episodes and how you've loved the fact that energetically they're aligned with you and we're approaching things and saying some of the same things throughout the episodes. But I can guarantee you, if somebody went back and listened to all those episodes, every single one of them has different nuggets.
Yeah.
And if somebody heard a similar phrase and said, "Oh, I've already heard this, I already know this," then they miss
Mm-hmm.
everything else that's in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens so often with communication is we read somebody's bio and we say, "Oh, but I already know how to coach,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to do it."
Mm-hmm.
This is also why when I host live events, I don't release an agenda. I tell
I love
people
it.
what time to expect to be there, what time to
Mm-hmm.
expect lunch, but I never tell people the order of the speakers. I never tell
Mm-hmm.
people what to expect because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want somebody reading through the speakers going, "I already know what that person's going to say."
I love it. It's the same way when I interview people, right? And I have these, what is it? I call it interview. It's really more of a conversation because we go back and forth. Um, they were like, "Hey, what questions are you gonna ask?" I'm
I
like,
have no
yeah,
idea. Don't ask me
exactly.
that.
I tell them, I said, like, look, there's a baseline. Hey, how you got started? Blah blah blah. After that, it's however the conversation flows.
Yeah.
I have different things that I want to achieve and talk about and stuff like that. But if it takes on a whole nother spectrum of something, I'm fine with that.
Well, and aren't those some of your best episodes? Which, I mean, I know
Yes.
some of my best episodes are ones where I had this plan and agenda for where I wanted it to go, and
Mm-hmm.
we went somewhere incredibly different that I could have not even imagined taking
Mm-hmm.
it, that was so much more valuable than what I had put together.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really, really cool interview with Seth Meyers talking
Mm-hmm.
about Taylor Swift. Have you seen this interview?
Mm-mm, I haven't.
So Seth Meyers is talking about Taylor Swift coming on and hosting SNL when Seth Meyers was a writer for SNL.
Mm-hmm.
And they had written this monologue
Mm-hmm.
for Taylor Swift. And she walks in and she says, so before they even show her anything, she says, so I actually wrote a song that I think might be a good fit for the monologue. Can I play it for you? And so they bring everybody in and they ripped up their monologue and they're like, we wish we could tell you how bad what we had written for you was
Mm-hmm.
compared to what you had provided. And I think as podcast hosts or as communicators in general,
Mm-hmm.
when we go into a conversation with a set of expectations about where it's going to go,
Mm-hmm.
we lose the ability to allow the other person in that conversation to bring their genius to it, to take it to the
Mm-hmm.
places that we didn't know it could go because we don't know what that other person knows or how they see the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I said, started podcasting in 2016. I think after I got done with the independent artists, because a lot of them weren't used to like media and things of that nature. When I started doing the business people, I stopped preparing questions and stuff, and I have not done since. Like
Yeah.
I don't even write down my questions anymore.
I don't either. Like sometimes, I mean, if they're an author and they give
Mm-hmm.
me enough time, I'll read their book
Mm-hmm.
before we do an interview, or at least I'll read a couple chapters at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
If they've done a lot of other interviews, I might scan through to make sure that I'm not
Mm-hmm.
asking the same
I
boring
do that.
questions that
Yeah.
everybody else has offered.
Yeah, I do
But to
that.
me, the less I know about the guest,
Mm-hmm.
the more authentic and curious the conversation actually is.
Exactly. And that's how I look at it. Because I don't want to like I said, I do that. I'll skip over, what I'm saying, skim through a couple of the interviews, but I always like to ask questions that just come to mind. And I love when people are like, oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Like they
Or
just
I've
light
never
up
been
and
asked
everything.
that before. I've
Uh-huh.
never been asked that before as a podcast host gold. Like I get giddy when
Uh-huh.
somebody says, nobody's ever asked me that before. I'm like, I have
Uh-huh.
done my job as a host.
Exactly. Now all you need is one. You know what I'm saying? Throughout the
Yeah.
entire conversation, I need, oh, well, that's a good
Right?
question.
If you're a golfer, it's like that hole in one, right? That
Yeah.
shot that comes
Uh-huh.
every like so often that's like that unicorn.
hmm So as you're going through and you're making these life decisions and transitions, right? What was the response from your networking people that you told, the ones that you confided in about your ideas and dreams and wanting to do something different?
It varied. So the biggest advice I can give to somebody, and the thing that I'm so thankful for, is that I had a group of people who understood that
Mm-hmm.
I could go check myself with. And
Mm-hmm.
these were people who were never going to tell me what I should or shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
They were people that I had gone through the NLP trainings with, and so they knew
Mm-hmm.
the way that success worked. People who had no attachment to my success at all. My
Mm-hmm.
family were the least understanding and the most supportive, if that makes any sense at all. They
No.
wanted to support me as a human being because they loved me, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand and they would never understand
Mm-hmm.
because they've never been through it. They're not
Mm-hmm.
business owners.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part was actually in my professional circles.
Mm-hmm.
I had been in networking groups for so long as an attorney, and that's how people knew me. So when I started posturing as a business coach and
Mm-hmm.
talking about speaking and being an author and all of those things, I actually shifted and left that networking group and went to another one because
Mm-hmm.
I gave it about a year and a half and everybody still saw me as the attorney, and I felt like I needed that fresh start in the professional
Mm-hmm.
world. It took me a long time. I opened my coaching business in 2019, so
Mm-hmm.
4 years
Mm-hmm.
for me to start to figure out how to be Amber the human that is
Mm-hmm.
also an attorney, that is also a business coach, that is also an
Mm-hmm.
author,
Mm-hmm.
not Amber the attorney that opened a business coaching company. And those are two very different things.
Yeah. Oh, so with your you have your business coaching, and then of course you open your own practice. But the podcast, do you look at it as like a business, or how do you look at your podcast? How do you view it?
So it's gone through different phases. It
Mm-hmm.
started as a passion project,
Mm-hmm.
and then when the business opened, it became a marketing tool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, it's a credibility builder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also for me, sometimes it's like sometimes I'll have a really shitty day
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have this podcast interview and I'll think, God, I don't want to do this today. I'm not in the
Mm-hmm.
mindset for this.
Mm-hmm.
And that conversation is exactly what I needed to
Mm-hmm.
shift my mindset. Um, so it's been kind of my own therapeutic
Mm-hmm.
journey. I think ideally we as podcasters all want it to be monetizable at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that we make it a business,
Mm-hmm.
I've never taken sponsors on it. I've never done anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment that we take sponsors on it, the moment it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a business, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes something different than what we
Mm-hmm.
intended it to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I wouldn't take
Mm-hmm.
sponsors, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't monetize it.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm just open to the possibilities of where the conversations can take me
Mm-hmm.
more than where the podcast itself can take me.
Well, okay, so I'll give you my experience with mine, right? Business oriented because my degree is in business with a concentration in marketing. But I've always used mine as like a funnel system for other things. So yeah, I'll go and interview guests, but then those guests, some of them become clients, marketing clients, right? Or, networking clients to where, they'll send me people and things of that nature because they get to see everything I do. So then the services be like, production type things, other people wanting to start their podcast and they're taking up my time. So then I'm going to charge them to show them how to set up something correctly. That
Yeah.
way, what I'm saying, they won't fall into those numbers. I don't know if you've seen the numbers and stuff, but the success rate in podcasting is horrible because people don't understand. You have to be consistent. You have to build your audience, and it doesn't just come overnight.
No, it doesn't. And people expect that, right? The best advice I was given was to not launch your show until you had 2 months of content,
Mm-hmm.
because then you could launch your show and then you could
Mm-hmm.
spend at least a month marketing it, and then to
Mm-hmm.
always make sure you were at least a month ahead. Now, there have
Mm-hmm.
been times that I've produced content on a whim, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's ended up in my favor. I did an episode from the golf course one day
Mm-hmm.
because I had forgotten to record an episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if I'm going to talk about work-life harmony and how there's no excuses and flexibility is the most important thing, then I guess it's
Mm-hmm.
about time that I do what I
Mm-hmm.
speak. So we had just finished the course, and right off of the 18th green, I pulled out my phone and was like, all right, here's the content for today. And it turned out being a
Love it.
fantastic episode because it
Uh-huh.
showed the flexibility in the life that I talk about so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the most important thing that people need to do when they take on any venture,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether it's business, personal, I mean, this is the question that drives everything I do. And that is, what is success to me in this scenario?
I was just about to
So,
ask you that.
oh, really?
Yes.
So, like, when I'm actually working on a planner right now, because I do this as my own practice. When
Uh-huh.
I do my planning in the evening for the
Mm-hmm.
next day,
Mm-hmm.
um, I put down my calendar, my agenda. Then when I wake up in the morning, as I'm reviewing that, I write down what would make that day a success.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the day, I ask myself, what made today a success? And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they're the same things and sometimes they're different.
Yeah.
Anytime I enter into a business relationship, a personal relationship, anytime I go to a networking event, anytime I accept any type of offer,
Mm-hmm.
I have a clear understanding of what I want to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the most important thing I can say about this is have an understanding of what success means to you in that
Mm-hmm.
scenario, but also have an open mind enough to acknowledge possibilities that you may not have considered so
Mm-hmm.
that you don't get this tunnel vision. Understanding what a return on investment is, what they want out of it, and what success is throughout
Mm-hmm.
every minute part of our life is the only way that we can achieve it.
I love it. So do you feel at this point in your life, do you feel fulfilled?
I definitely feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel successful. which I think is probably the most powerful way that I
Mm-hmm.
can put it, because for a long time I thought I need to feel successful every single day. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I failed. Sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like I'm successful.
Mm-hmm.
And the external person can look at me and say, well, look at everything that you've done. First person
Mm-hmm.
in your family go to college,
Mm-hmm.
three businesses. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what what do you want? And well, I want to feel successful. And
Mm-hmm.
almost always
Mm-hmm.
when I don't feel successful, it's because I'm unaligned with what I'm doing.
Mm. I like the honesty in that. I like the my own definition of success is being able to do what you love to do.
Yeah.
And getting paid for it is like the icing on the cake and stuff. So
Yep.
I'll get
Would you
to
do it
wake up.
even if you weren't getting paid?
Yep, exactly. And that's how I chase my goals and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
even with like podcasting and investing in more stuff, the equipment, like I'm inside my studio right now, even though I got the watermark on or whatever. And I went from a 2-room facility to now a 6-room facility. So it's like, a lobby area, my office where I do most of my interviews and stuff from Zoom. Another room that I use just for that, photo studio, office behind that, little conference room area. So, and I get to come here every day and create stuff. And I love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. I love it.
I love that for myself. So that's how I define success. So for anyone out there, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, by the way. If For anyone out there who wants to get in contact with you, maybe they want to use you for coaching services, maybe they want to hire you as a speaker, maybe they're in the area and they need, what I'm saying, law advice, things of that nature, or business advice. Where would you like people to be directed to?
They can head over to Facebook is probably the best way. I have a community, the Break Your Bullshit Box community, and a lot of the updates of what I do are there. Um, they can head over to my website as well at successdevelopmentsolutions.com, and they can book a link on my calendar if they want to connect.
I love it. Thank you, Amber. Thank you for your time. Thank you for agreeing to do the interview.
Thank you so much
Um,
for having me on. It was fantastic. I loved the conversation.
and that's my goal for all my conversations for, everyone to walk away with something. And I feel like,
Yeah,
so we had a mutual exchange of energy and, ideas
absolutely.
and conversation. So
Always.
I would definitely love to, have you back on in the future to see, how further along you've gotten and, more successes that you've accomplished.
I'm always down for it. And I'm looking forward to just continued connection with you. So if there's anything I can do to support you at any time, please let me know.
That's what's up. Everybody out there, y'all make sure y'all go and you need a book with Amber. And of course, what I'm saying, all her stuff will be listed on the video. And as always, y'all can go to the Bank That Radio show and all the social media handles and things of that nature. And y'all keep doing what you're doing, keep chasing your dreams.